when we started flying the A-12, anyone that had an unauthorized person seeing it, even a military person, even an Air Force general, if he didn't have a need to know, he had to sign a disclosure. And Lord help him if he talked about it. And we did have this happen when Frank Murray had to sit the A-12 down in Thailand. And the base commander was a colonel, and he came out there, and the first thing when they opened the canopy, the agency has never and will never ever admit there is an Area 51 in the story.
Established by the CIA in 1955 to develop and test America's most secret military projects, Area 51 was named after a grid number on a map. While officially it doesn't exist, today satellite images of the Nevada desert show 7 runways and more than 25 hangars. Shrouded in secrecy, access has always been highly restricted. But finally, the early programs that started it all are being declassified, and memories can be brought to light.
It was a real Cold War. You're talking nuclear bombs aimed at every major city, and it's like 2 people, who's going to throw the first punch?
There are a lot of times when democracy just has to give way to strict control like military so you can accomplish something that will allow for your country to survive. And that's the way we all thought about it, I think.
When we had a meeting, no pencil or paper was allowed. Even the pilots did not talk to each other because nothing was written down. It's all in our heads.
When we came into the program, we were given a code name. My first name was Ken, and the last name started with C for Collins, but it was Colmar, C-O-L-M-A-R.
At least with me, I'm not that curious, which I felt was good on the secrecy part of it. I mean, if I don't need to know it, I'm not going to ask.
I was told, don't bother ever trying to find your level of clearance. You've just been cleared by the highest groups in Washington, D.C. They have an apparatus to know what you're doing, what you're saying, where you're going.
All right, this is Pete Wichert, and you're watching The Truth or listening to The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. And today's Saturday, March 7th of 2015. And today's going to be a really big show. I am like stoked. We have TD Thornton Barnes, Area 51 employee, former NASA employee. I mean, his worked on Project Oxcart. I mean, the guy has done a lot. As advisor in Vietnam. It's really American hero. Then followed the next guest following, TD will be Bill Scott, good friend of the show. And we're going to touch on some of the recent events, such as like Hammond Square out here in Chicago. So the listeners here, could get my take on it. I've been here. I had a lot of questions asking about that, and should have TD joining us. TD Thornton, thanks for joining The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction with Pete Wichert. It's an honor to speak to you once again.
Well, it's my pleasure as well, Pete. It's good to talk to you as well.
Well, yeah, first off, I mean, I just listened to the last interview, and I don't know how we're going to top that one. We did well, and we covered so many topics. And I got to say one thing, a lot of the female listeners sent in questions saying, how did you hide that from your wife for so long? That was...
Yes, my wife has asked that question as well.
So I got to admit, it stimulated a lot of people's minds, and that's what we're here to do. And I kind of wanted this time around to maybe get your take on current events and things like that, and cover your websites. And for people listening on the radio or watching right now via YouTube, go to Area 51 specialprojects.com/Barnes/Area 51 to have a good idea on what he's done. There's also, you could buy his books at td-barnes.com and check out, there's pictures. Is that you in the Pentagon and White House, TD?
Yeah, CIA. I still go back there quite often, and I kind of like that photo. And you don't see that many of them floating around, standing in the field right there in the main lobby.
Yeah. I was shocked. I was showing my grandma, and she goes, "You know him?" There's no, like she was in shock that I could just basically have you on the show. That she doesn't believe that I guess I'm that important.
I was able to take my family back there in recent years. When they started declassifying the things we did with the CIA, we were able to go back and spend time at, particularly Family Day. That's what's really neat. Go back there, and there'll be as high as 25,000 former and present CIA people and their families, the kids. It's a very family-oriented organization, and we love to go back there for that.
Wow. Well, yeah, you're one of for everything you've done, you deserve it. You deserve a plaque, actually. There, I'm not gonna lie, but first off, there's been, since the last time we talked, the rise of ISIS or ISIL, the Islamic State, whatever you want to call them. What do you think? What's your take on the risk they pose to us, especially with the border situation as it is, and things like that? I just kind of want to get your take on current events.
Yeah, I've been staying pretty current on that. In fact, I'm writing a novel about that. It's going to be a novel because it's predictions and stuff of what is going to happen. But that is a very, very scary situation because so many of our young people are looking for a cause, and these people are on the Twitter, they're on the Facebook. They're on Twitter alone. They're doing about 90,000 tweets a month, and a lot of the what they're reaching out is touching the people from poor areas that's never had anything, and they're looking for find their course in life, and that sounds exciting. The romance of going to battle and stuff in a foreign country, and it's really drawing people in. And then, of course, in the prisons, this is a real problem there because a lot of the prisons are just training grounds for to convert these people to be radical of this nature.
Yeah, there's a group that no one really heard of because they stopped the plot. I think it was in Los Angeles. They were planning on doing something that actually stemmed. They were all American jihadists that got caught before they could carry out their action, but they were gonna blow up something pretty big, and it all stemmed from prison.
I got a message. Well, it's just kind of a general thing that came out from the agency just this last week, and they got investigations going. Law enforcement does in every state in the United States now. They're watching sales that's growing, and this didn't start just recently. We became aware of it recently, but you think back to Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. We had that going in the 60s or so, way back when. So there's always been this notion, but it didn't really get on fire until they started beheading the people and stuff like that. Then they do that because it causes a reaction from the Western world.
Yeah, and it's getting out of control. But why is the president refusing to call it what it is? He seems to be reluctant to call it.
There's a lot of us asking that question. Because and how you going to combat something when you don't even call it what it is?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a sign that he might actually just. I'm not saying he is a radical jihadist, but he might have sympathy for the cause.
Yeah, and then we got the trend in Washington and different places to be politically correct, and they just go overboard.
It's killing us. It's killing the way we speak to one another. I mean, you can't disagree with someone of another race.
You don't dare offend anyone.
Yeah.
You might be talking to 1,000 people, but if you offend just one of them, that's what makes the headlines. The rest of them may be on your side.
Yeah. And even now with the feminist movement, they're getting really extreme too. You can't question anything, a lady does, and then they call you you're against the move. So it's almost like, and then they have the banning brown paper bags because it's offensive, and all sorts of Halloween costumes. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah, our society is going crazy on that stuff, and it's scary. That to see that, and just like I don't know whether it's local or whether this is national, but they are charging a family for letting their kids walk from a park alone.
Yeah, I heard
unattended. My God, when I was a kid, we did everything, but there's none of that stuff going on. And now, they tell you how to run your families and everything else. So.
Oh yeah, the kids belong to your state. Belong to the state. Actually, Melissa Harris Perry, I think, said we need to get over the notion that your children belong to you. They're part of the collective. I mean, that sounds a lot like communism to me. Yeah,
our society is, it's degraded a lot. In my opinion, it's. There's certain places, I live here in Las Vegas, and there's certain areas, even in Las Vegas, you go to, and you're in a different world entirely. It's just like in another country, and I think all your big cities are like that.
Yeah, I mean, we I'm not sure if you're aware of Hammond Square. Have you heard that in the news? The black site here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was down there at a protest. We didn't even have 200 people there. Maybe if you count everyone who was there for maybe 5 minutes, we had 200 people. It was sad to see because this is American citizens being disappeared without any rights. Just basically vanished and tortured. And I'm working on having someone who was actually taken there after the NATO summit on the show. And it was sad to see the lack of, support for it could be someone that gets taken there, but yet the media covers it up, sweeps it under the rug. And there's a direct connection to Guantanamo Bay. The same officer who's had wrongful convictions was ordering the torturing of some of the most infamous pictures and stuff. And it's just swept under the rug here.
You know, a lot of this change started. I recall it starting even in the late '60s and '70s when there's classified people working on top secret projects and stuff. You know, back then they screened you, and if you drank too much, at least little thing could get you disqualified, or if your wife did, or one of your family members. They really looked at you. And I remember out at the area, it's just coincidence that in my group is all whites, and they passed a law where we had to have, I think it was 2.6 blacks, percent, and they forced us to hire some black people, and these guys, they were great guys that they went out there, but unfortunately, they weren't trained for what we were doing. They didn't have their clearances. They were uncomfortable. We were uncomfortable because when they got out there, they couldn't go into any of the rooms where anything classified was going on because they weren't cleared for it. But we were forced to in order to have a contract, to have that percentage, and then it's changed, and it's not just blacks now. You've got to have all your classes of society. You can't screen one out. And there's some of them, they just are very easily to be converted or to be blackmailed.
Yeah.
And that's a major concern.
Turncoats. Yeah.
But you got to hire them.
Even Plum Island, one of the most secure. It's on an island. They had scientists working there. I think that had ties directly to Al Qaeda. So that goes to show you. It's politically correct in their eyes, but it's actually exposing a lot of risks in national security, and nothing against the people of these countries. It's just a fact that sometimes, like TD just said it just throws off the rhythm of your unit. I've heard a lot of firemen saying the same thing, and police officers as well. So
yeah, it's not fair to either side. The people that they're forcing other people onto, and the people they're forcing into. They're just creating a very uncomfortable environment.
Yeah, and not a good environment to succeed at what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I agree. And another thing, are you familiar with the chemical plant explosion in the Ukraine?
Vaguely, I don't know very much about it, but
based on have you seen the video at all, or any of the videos that surfaced?
No, I haven't on that. No.
I would suggest you look it up. I get a lot of emails. This is from a fan. I forgot to get his name. I'm sorry, but he was telling me to ask you if you thought that could be a small tactical nuclear device, because there was aftershocks. It took out the window. It pretty much didn't burn for a while. It kind of just faded out. Things that are very uncharacteristic to chemical plant fires. So he was just wondering if you were familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm really not. I'm not on that at all. And going back to our early days, when they were interviewing us for our jobs and stuff, I remember the agency was interviewing guys to be one of the pilots on the spy planes, and the way that worked back in those days, you had to be. They selected you. You didn't volunteer or put in for a job or something. They came to you, but they'd know someone that was high in their field or whatever, but they'd bring them back to Washington, and they wouldn't tell them who the interviewers were. They'd go back there, maybe some little motel room or something, and they'd interview them, and if they liked them, a month or two later, they'd bring them back and maybe give them some tests, and it was a long process. And they really got up there to close to being selected. They'd do their background checks on them to make sure there's nothing that's going to, kill them, being classified or getting top secret clearance, and they looked at the family, the wife. If the wife was gossiped too much or too domineering or drank too much, that could get you disqualified. But we had one guy, he passed everything, and they really wanted him, and so they finally said, we want to offer you a job, and all we can tell you is it's west of the Mississippi. And they said, what will I be doing? They said, we can't tell you. And they said, you'll be away from home a lot. And in those days we'd leave on Monday morning, come home Friday night. And he said, well, I need to ask my wife. And they said, okay. They said, okay, you go ask her. But then he got back, they were gone.
I believe it, because anyone who needs clearance from their wife, that they're not making it.
and that's how they screened the people out, and because they looked at the family as a whole. And, you're talking about when the wife knew, they never knew what was doing. My wife learned in 2009 where I worked and what I did.
See, I was saying 2005, so I was even oh wow,
and
be upset.
but they didn't ask. They didn't want to know, and you can know too much, and
yeah, then they're at risk.
So the families really didn't know, and they didn't ask, and they're just kind of universal in our people. And what was ironic, we did this for years on end. We'd leave Monday morning. The wife didn't have any idea where we was going to come on Friday night. Now, we could call them anytime we wanted to.
And did you take the Janet aircraft or the bus?
Well, we didn't have the Janet then. In those days, the Janet didn't come until the Air Force took over.
Okay.
The CIA we didn't have regular flights. I flew up on a Queen Air. And some of our guys flew up on we had a Martin 404 and an Otter, and then the groups flew up separately. Like my group was 23 of us in special projects, and we flew up. But the Lockheed guys, or the Air Force guys, or the CIA guys, regular CIA communications guys, they all flew up separately. We did not mix, and but consequently, the wives didn't know, or the kids didn't know until they started classifying the project. They flew us back to CIA headquarters, and that's when we was able to tell the wives what we did and where we worked and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of got to blow them away at first, and then they kind of, once it sets in, realize what happened.
Well, they were used to the secrecy stuff, and their kids grew up saying, and someone asked them what their daddy did. He worked out at the Nevada test site or something like that. It was, and we always had a story, and kids didn't know any better.
Here's kind of actually, if I have a curveball for you, here's a question I got this morning from someone from Austin, Texas, named JC. They want to know, why is your nickname Thunder?
We use nicknames, and a lot of the people out there, like the pilots, the people that flew into harm's way, that's flying in over in the spy planes, and they actually had pseudo names. They didn't use real names, and we got their names off of gravestones in Europe. The CIA did that, and so they would have a background, and they actually had used pseudo names. But those of us working like a special project, no one used their names. It wasn't that we were forbidden, but it's so much easier for the customer to remember Thunder than it would be for my name.
I got it.
And so we used a code name. Some of them used everybody had nicknames in services and in the agency and stuff, but it was more for ease, and they still do it at the Air Force today, and the different places. Everybody knows their code name.
Mm-hmm. And security too.
Mm-hmm. But it's like with the pilot, the CIA didn't call it a plane. They didn't call it a plane. It was an article, and the pilots were called drivers, and each of our CIA pilots had a Dutch number. Frank Murray lives up here in Nevada. He was Dutch 20. Wow. And if they need to talk about a particular mission, they say Dutch 20 flying Article 1 to 21. That meant it was Frank Murray and flying a A-12 Blackbird.
Oh, wow.
And so we had their code names for everything like that.
That would be hard to decipher if you had no idea of what to look for. So,
yeah, you didn't know and no one used those code names. It just wasn't something that's commonly used.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that makes sense. So, JC, there you go. I'm gonna start calling you Thunder.
that was the name because I was radar, and probably because of the TD part too. But that was the name they stuck me with, was Thunder, and I'm still known as Thunder today among the guys that worked with me out there.
That's a cool nickname. I like it. I really do. Thunder Barnes, right there. Oh wow. I had a lot of good fan questions. Here's one from a girl named Jill, and she wanted to know, TD, with all your knowledge and experience, can you give us your take on what's your biggest concern with the current geopolitical tension going on in the world? And do you feel that times now are more dangerous than when you were helping fight during the Cold War?
Yeah, they're much more dangerous. We first of all, we don't know who all our enemies are. In those days, of course, the Russians were the bad guys, and China wasn't powerful enough at that time to be a real concern. Today, the biggest fear, everybody's talking about the terrorists and stuff, but they're more or less regional. What everybody is afraid of now is cyber warfare.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do more damage to us because we're so dependent. And like the books I wrote was on the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse and electromagnetic pulse. That could really happen, and it would wipe out 90% of the population. And it's so easy to do, and we're not really prepared for it. We're getting prepared. Our military is really taking it serious, but our civilian people are not. Like it would take out all your electrical power grids. And just imagine waking up one morning. It doesn't hurt your buildings or anything. You wake up one morning, you don't have internet, you don't have phone service, your electric pumps are burned up, you don't have water. I mean, no, you don't. Without electricity, just imagine in your house, if you didn't have electricity, what all wouldn't work.
It's like the end of Western civilization, actually.
And all your automobiles, today's got these little fancy keys, remote control keys and stuff. It'd wipe all those out, so your car, your vehicles wouldn't start. Some of the older ones would, but the effects of a EMP, and it just happens in seconds. And what it does, it's for your listeners that don't know how this works. It's kind of like a radio wave. It's not a necessarily electricity. It's a radio wave, a very high voltage, and it gets anything that's got an antenna. And your highline wires are an antenna, so it should be detonated in New Jersey and go all the way into Canada and Mexico. It go anywhere those highline wires went in a second, less than a second. It would travel wherever they went, so you could wipe out the whole continent with one burst. Wow!
And out of all the I guess you could say potential enemies we have, you would say that it's more than likely that at least one or more of these countries have the capability right now.
Iran could do it. North Korea could do it. They could do it now if they got the device, and they can get the device. And it doesn't have to be on a launched on a missile. It can be put in a freighter, on an old freighter that's going to New York City, and steam into the harbor, and they set that thing off, and bang, everything's gone.
Wow.
It's that simple. It's not difficult. That's what's scary. It's not expensive. It's not difficult. And we are flat not prepared for it.
Is there anything we could do, too, as individuals prepare for this?
Not much. Not really. Like your radios and stuff, they wouldn't have to be turned on. But see, it'd take out like your TV transmissions and all that stuff. You wake up, you wouldn't have any communication whatsoever.
Wow.
And then what it, and I think of the big cities like here in Las Vegas, we pump our water out of
Lake Mead.
Yeah. It would wipe out those pumps. So you get up in the morning, and the first time you flushed your bathroom, that was it. It wouldn't refill because there's no water.
Yeah.
Imagine a family with no bathroom in a big city. What are you going to do?
And eventually there'd probably be a war over Lake Michigan. So, like Chicago would be Lake Michigan's water. It'd be
And
like a war zone here.
yeah, it'd be all over. That's just one element, but it was. But then you wouldn't have your food deliveries into the big cities.
Yeah. Most average, the food comes 1,000 miles away on average. So,
and I've even in my books I talk about but even your military, even though the military is hardening their equipment,
their food comes by truck.
The food comes by truck. Exactly, they get their food just like we do. It comes by truck.
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm sure they have more stockpiles of food than your average person, but it's still not going to last forever.
Yeah, it wouldn't last forever, and so it would pose a problem, and it's scary. So that type of warfare, or the cyber warfare, either one, is our big major concern.
And even space warfare. I'm not sure if you heard of this. There's a satellite that from the Department of Defense exploded in orbit, and no one's quite sure why. And they're pretty much talking about it's only a 20-year-old satellite, and it took them weeks actually to release the information, and it's orbiting intact, and it's unclear where it could land. Have you heard about that?
Not that particular one, but we've had. We know that China has developed anti-satellite warfare, and I'm sure we have too.
Oh, yeah.
As early as the 80s, there's not much known about this, but we had the rods from God that were in satellites, and they were no more than they were rods that we could launch, and they would penetrate bunkers, and it was a deterrent, just like we had the atomic bomb, but that we had them, and our enemies knew we had them, and they just that we could use them if we had to.
Wow. I mean, I've heard like more. That X30. What is it? Man, it's blowing my mind now. X-37B. That there's a lot of people that are accusing that of sabotaging some of the Chinese satellites. So I wonder if this is retaliation.
Could be. I'm sure. I don't know it personally.
Sounds like it.
I know that we got to have stuff like that. I don't know of any specific vehicles or whatever, but knowing how far advanced we were, even when I was in the field, and we didn't have computers back then. We were just getting into computers. We're doing everything with slide rules. So you can just imagine what we got today.
Yeah.
Or you can't imagine, put it that way.
Yeah. That's why the truth is stranger than fiction. And let's see. I had another fan question. And this was actually pretty interesting because I know an article came out in a pretty big magazine over 10 years ago about this particular subject. They go, TD, do you feel that Area 51 is an active base? Because I've heard many things about Area 51 basically closing down and moving to a new location. Jeffrey from Alabama.
No, it's very active. It'll always be there. And you got, a lot of people have never been out there, and a lot of people don't really know what Area 51 is. When someone says they worked out at Area 51, they may not have worked but one day out there. I'll describe what it was like when I was there, and not go into modern stuff because we can't talk about that. But
I understand.
There was
don't incriminate yourself, Thunder.
Most of the people that worked at Area 51 were required to live in another state. They could not live in the state of Nevada. They had to commute in. These were what we call the customer. And the only people that actually could say they worked at Area 51 was your CIA communications people, our special projects group. There's 23 of us. Your cooks, cleaning, this sort of thing. You had just a small cadre, and then you had a few Air Force. We had the 1129th special activity squadron there for provide chase planes and to maintain the base. You know, kind of like a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't run the operation, but he made sure that we had places to sleep and had the water and, you know, all that food and that kind of stuff. But everybody else was worked there. They were very temporary. They'd have a project that they were working on, and they would come in for that project. And once it's done, they're gone. And maybe they didn't go out there but one day. It might not last but one day. And that's where the secrecy comes from. Is Area 51 is nothing but a high-tech laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
It is where we test all of our new technology that we come up with.
Yeah.
And they may never even land it. I'll just give you a real wild example. Say Texas Instrument comes up with some kind of a pod or something that they want to sell the Air Force to put on a B-52 that can do something. And the Air Force will say, well, I need to check it out. And maybe it's something that has to do with China.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we need to check it against the Chinese radar, see if it works. Well, they don't have to go to China to do it. All they do is fly over Area 51, and they got their test.
Mm.
It's just a laboratory where they can. So, but where your secrecy comes in is maybe Lockheed and Boeing, for example, are competing with each other for a new type of plane that the Air Force or Navy or someone wants, and they want to sell it to the military. And they'll do their prototypes in their home, you know, at their home plants. Mm-hmm. And then they, when they're ready to sell them to whoever, the people there, if it's one, will say, well, come show me what you got.
So it's almost, you could look at it like kind of just like a place for these companies in secret to not give away any of their technology and test
they go out there and they
test their
they'll test them. But the secrecy is you protect that customer. You don't want the
another company stealing it.
Yeah, you don't want your competitor knowing what. You don't want Boeing to know what Lockheed has got. So it is a real deep secret. It's not that the government's doing anything that's secret. It's the customers.
Yeah. Who are actually deserve that chance too.
So in answer to the question, it is very, very much alive out there, but it's just not. It's still a testing laboratory, is what it is. And but we got nowhere else in the world do they have the assets there to test just whatever we need to test. Because even then, for example, we were building the A-12 spy plane. It was the first stealth plane that the United States built. Mm-hmm. And the Russians had came out with a new radar. We detected it by getting reflections off of ICBMs being test flown in Russia. And we knew they had a new radar. And we needed to know whether it would be able to shoot down the A-12 spy plane that was going to replace the U-2. And that was one of my jobs being in radar. The Russians made the mistake of moving this one of those tall king radars into Cuba, and this was before the missile crisis. That a couple of years, we knew they had it there, so we would actually fly a ghost plane at Cuba, make them think that they were under attack, where they'd turn on their radar, and we would evaluate it. And what we determined on that was that yes, they would be able to shoot this plane down, and we never did fly another flight over Russia, even though we went ahead and built the Blackbirds. The Blackbirds is more than everybody knows about the SR-71, but that was the last one. You had 3 other versions of it before the SR-71, anyway, they
saved lives. It saved lives. I mean, you might have spent a lot of money, but it's worth saving the people's lives who'd have been shot down.
Yeah, that's one of the good things that I like to talk about it out there. And the A-12 program was one that we actually had a we flew 2,850 missions out of Area 51 with the A-12. It's a Mark III plane. No one else had Mark III planes. Flew at 90,000 feet, and what we did with it was we overflew North Vietnam to locate all the missile sites, because we could fly faster than the missiles. They couldn't shoot us down. They shoot at us, but they never could hit us. And but we located all the missile sites, and that saved countless lives of our pilots in the war zone.
Oh yeah, we're already suffering major casualties.
Yeah, and then we did the MiG program. We had the MiGs were knocking us out 9-to-1 kill ratio against us, and we didn't know why. And we got our hands on a MiG-21.
Was that in Korea? Did you get that? Or
no, we actually got that in 1968. The Iraqi defected to Israel with a brand new MiG-21, and they were just kicking our tails in Vietnam. We were just losing. We'd lost 15 planes in one day and didn't shoot down a single one.
Oh wow!
And we didn't know why. So we got our hands on the MiG-21, and we brought it out to the area and we tore it down to see how it built, how everything worked. I mean, every detail. And then we put it back together and started flying it. And it was a joint Navy and Air Force. Everybody had their finger in it because everybody was losing pilots.
Yeah.
And the Navy, when they came in and flew the first flight against it, we got 100% kill against every Navy pilot that flew against us on the first try. And the same thing with the Air Force. And what they realized, it wasn't the planes. Our pilots just didn't know how to fight that type of plane. And so the Navy started Top Gun immediately. Their Top Gun weapons school, and they turned their kill ratio around completely. And then it took the Air Force a couple of years before they realized, we need to do what the Navy did.
There's a sense of pride. They didn't want to admit.
So what we did out there, we just totally turned around the losses that we were getting in the war.
Saved countless lives again.
And we determined that, and then we started to exercise red flag that still continues today. But what we determined was it took about 10 missions in the war zone for a pilot to become proficient enough that he could possibly survive the war. So we decided to give them those 10 missions here in Nevada rather than in the war zone.
Yeah.
So we actually do the exercises, and they actually go up against aggressors that fly like our enemy. We actually use their tactics and all.
I was reading about that. Yeah. So basically, instead of sending them out to the slaughter, you would perfect them there, and then send them out battle hardened without even actually fighting a battle, ready to kick ass. Sorry, but
it's really something to see the red flag. In fact, they're going on now, but we have pilots come in from all over the world. Our friendly pilots that participate. But we had a whole squadron of MiG planes stationed here that they go up against.
And that would be something the government would want to keep hush hush.
Oh yeah, we had to keep that. It's declassified now. And that's one thing that kept Area 51 alive is when we was you might say reverse engineering our enemy radar and planes and that sort of thing. Because once we did the first MiGs, we realized we're really onto something. And so it continued. We had a lot of projects after that. Every time someone would come out with a new plane or new radar or something, we would copy it. And I kind of got off the subject. When I was talking about the radar, we actually built models of that Soviet radar that we were testing and going up against in Cuba.
We built Area 51, right?
We built them out at Area 51, so we didn't have to go to Cuba to test it. So that's what we've done ever since. Someone comes out with something new, it's just a matter of time that we got our own version of it that looks just like what they go up against, and we got them out there.
It's so less like I have a couple more questions before I gotta let you go, but it's so far off from what the public perceives Area 51 to be. You had so many wild stories because everybody wondered what are they doing out there. And one of the fan questions I thought was a great question. This guy, he goes by, was this Alan? He wants to know what if you feel that Bob Lazar has casted a dark shadow over all of your hard work and your team's hard work?
No, it's and he's not the only one that's done this. It's kind of sad that they did it, because everybody knows better. Well, I won't say everybody. When I was on the first National Geographic documentary we did on Area 51, National Geographic had me do 35 radio interviews from a motel room in Washington, D.C. the day that it premiered. And people would call in from Brazil, Portugal, all over the world, and they didn't ask questions about the planes. They'd say, "What did you feed the aliens?"
Oh God!
Or how many did you have? They didn't ask, did we have any? They assumed that we had.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I would like to know the person that made that cover story up, and they deserve a Medal of Honor. I'm telling you.
Well, but think about Pete. We were flying, even with the U-2, we flew up. No one knew we had that plane, and every time we had a test flight out of the area, we broke the world's altitude record, but we couldn't tell anyone. And people would see the plane flying up there 13 miles up, but we didn't have anything. The world didn't have anything that could even come close. And it was secret, so it became a UFO. And then the same thing with the A-12, because it's flying faster than a bullet, 90,000 feet. And people would, you couldn't help but, there's certain things were just right, the atmosphere, whatever, they would see this thing.
And the maneuvers were
and it was a UFO, and no one knew we had these, even our own Air Force. For a long time.
Even the president.
Yeah, it's a CIA, it's a CIA operation, and we kept it from everyone. And then we do loud sonic booms and stuff, coming and going, and Air Force would take the blame for it at Fallon, Nevada. They didn't know what they're taking the blame for, but yeah, we're sorry. They had no idea what we were doing, but so knew we were doing some really, really neat sonic booms.
So how many bottles of whiskey did you go through after the interviews with those people? Man, I don't know if I could have handled that after all the work you've done to be.
But people always wonder, what could they possibly be doing out there? And they think, and they think there's a big force of people out there. There's not. It's just a real skeleton crew, but you have a lot of people flying in there. They fly in there every day, but it's just for their project, and out there we worked on different projects. We had different customers, and a lot of them little simple projects, and some was a more complex. But even in my own group, we didn't snoop into each other's customer. Who you doing this for, or what's it for, or how's it work, or anything like that. And we still don't on certain things. As they declassify stuff. We talk about it, and we work for your benefit of your listeners. When the CIA started declassifying some of this stuff we did, we realized that the industry, we'd run into problems even way back then, that because it's secret, no one knew that we had them or that we solved them, and they were repeating themselves. Even into the modern technology today, we run into this problem, and when we declassified some of the projects, they'd say, well, damn, you guys had that same problem 50 years ago. What did you do to fix it? So we started, we now go around and do these talks and stuff officially at universities and museums and everywhere to get the legacy of the programs, but more so to share some of the declassified stuff that we learned way back then.
Well, that's awesome, because it gives people like me the chance to really just appreciate the work you've done. Your whole team, not just you specifically, and our country. It's amazing to look back at that.
Yeah, you mentioned the websites. The CIA actually and Air Force, different ones, actually furnish material for those websites, and I'll have some newspaper guy called me up. Where in the world did you get this document? I've been trying to get this for 10 years, and maybe the agency just faxed it to me. That's all I needed, and here it come, Because even today, I still work with the historians and stuff out there, because this generation doesn't know exactly everything that we did. Because
you guys hiring?
it was so classified back then. that we didn't talk to each other or to anyone else. And
Now
I
you're
had
kind of putting it all together with the
I
different
had the
people.
chief historian call me up about 12 years ago. And he said, I got a problem. We're declassifying the Ox Cart program. We know we paid for it, our program, but we don't know what you did. All the records got lost. And so that's when I started working with them, because I still knew all the people, the engineers, the pilots, and what have you. And
So we had to start from square one almost, huh?
yeah, they had no idea. They had no photographs. What they did, they gathered up all the material when they shut the program down, and they stored it at Norton Air Force Base. And over the years, all that got it. It's probably in some warehouse, and they destroyed everything. And when the agency woke up one morning, it wasn't there anymore.
Wow. Well, TD, I got one more question for you, and then I'm gonna let you talk about your websites again, quick, and where you can purchase your books. The last question is a fan question again, and they just wanted to know if you think that our biggest threat is actually going to be foreign or domestic, meaning like is our government going pushing the barrier and basically kind of stepping on the Constitution too much, and our president using dictatorial powers almost is what they're saying, or do you feel like it's an outside external country or that could be our biggest threat?
I think we all feel that China's our biggest threat.
Mm-hmm.
And we think it would be, I think we're long past trench warfare and all that kind of stuff. That's a thing of the past. But it'd be a cyber attacks and economic attacks, and we've always done that. We're playing games with Russia, the different ones now with the sanctions and stuff. We fight by proxy anymore. We've done that even in the Korean War.
Yep.
We were actually fighting Russians then.
Oh yeah, it was actual Russian pilots fighting U.S. pilots.
Yeah, that's my job. I was in Army intelligence at that time, and my job was to try to catch a Russian in the war.
Oh man, I swear they should make a movie about you, TD. I mean, Thunder Barnes.
I got to do some neat things. I was always in the right place, right time, and I got in it right at the very beginning. The missiles had just started, electronics and stuff, and I just happened to get in at the right time, right, and took advantage of it. And I got to do a lot of neat things.
And I'm just thankful I get to hear some of these. I know it's only 5% of what you did, but it's still amazing to me. And if anyone doesn't know that, check out our last interview and you'll hear the amazing amount of information provided. Only scratched 5% of what TD can talk about. So it only scratched the surface. But I'd like to thank you again for joining us. That's Thornton Barnes, TD Barnes, he goes by. He's got a YouTube page. And why don't you really quickly run down your websites, what's on there, and where people could buy your books, because they're amazing.
Yeah, you go on the Amazon or Barnes & Noble, just about any of the places, and just Google TD Barnes or Thornton Barnes, and you'll find my name. It pops up quite a bit, and find.
And then,
but we did one on the MiGs. I did the MiG program, and everything that I write, I have to get approved by the agency. So there's no
nothing we could dig up that hasn't been
right. But it's like the MiG. The MiG book is the name is the MiGs over Nevada. But no one has ever seen the photographs or any of the details that's in that. Because they just declassified that. Be a year ago last October.
Wow!
So that's how new it is, and I had all the photographs and stuff of us shooting up targets and doing this and that out of the area. So that book has been very, very popular. And then I got one that tells you how I got into the program. And the name is My Odyssey to Area 51.
And don't forget, like I said, td-barnes.com. It's on the screen for the viewers, the listeners. That's td-barnes.com and area 51 specialprojects.com. Check both those websites out as well. Unbelievable, some of the information on there. But TD, again, it's a pleasure having you on, and I'd love to have you back on in the near future if you wouldn't mind.
Don't mind at all. I love to talk about it. I love to talk, as you and your fans can tell.
Oh, and I love talking to you, so that's a perfect combination, buddy. I'm going to make you my military advisor for The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. Oh, wow. But again, thanks for, joining me. And
my pleasure, Pete.
And keep up the good work. And, God bless you. And thank you for everything you've done to, help make this country what it is today.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you very much.
God bless. See ya, TD.
You bet. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Thunder Barnes. That's my new military advisor. But following this man, you're welcome. Sorry, TD. This is The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. We had a problem. My mic is not working now. Again, I've been dealing with mic issues. I bought like 2 mics and returned them already, and now I have to return a third. So I apologize for that. And this is the Saturday, October 25th broadcast, and we have a special guest, TD Barnes. TD, sorry about that, and thank you for coming on The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction.
It's my pleasure, Pete.
So I have to ask you, basically, what why don't you give us your listener, or give my listeners a little background on information on yourself, because I don't think I could do yourself justice. I mean, you're so well qualified, and your time with NASA and everything. I mean, just if you'd like to run down a quick summary of your careers, basically.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. This what it boils down to is I was always in the right place at the right time to get involved in a lot of the things that I did get involved in. I was serving in Korea. I was Army intelligence. Got out of that and went into surface air missiles, and went to about 3 years of schooling on the various surface air missiles, and that's when the CIA grabbed me for a project they were doing in Cuba that had to do with Area 51. And from there, I worked for NASA for a while tracking the planes at Area 51. I was just 65 miles from Area 51, and we're doing there 15, what have you. And then I got involved with the CIA's A-12 Oshkosh project at Area 51. Then I stayed on for Soviet MiGs, stealth, several other projects like that.
Wow. So you have a very, very successful career. And so basically the first job you had, what made them reach out to you, and how'd that kind of happen?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because, people think Area 51, they think, just a place in the desert. What happens at Area 51 is worldwide. It doesn't entirely happen there. In fact, less than 5% of the people that's ever been involved with Area 51 even know about it. They think they're working on, they're off in Florida or someplace working on something. They think that they're doing it for the Navy or something like that. And the same applied to me. I was in I was quite advanced into ECM, ECCM, countermeasures for the surface air missiles that we were developing. And we were getting ready to deploy a battalion to Germany for the Berlin Wall, and also a battalion to Key West, Florida, because we knew the Russians moved into Cuba. And basically we had developed, this was for the Hawk missile. I was in Nike Ajax, Nike Hercules, and then went to school in the Hawk. And we realized that we didn't know whether the Hawk was shooting things down or not. It's a brand new missile, and we did not know the Russian ECM capabilities. So the CIA had, them and NSA, I think it was a joint venture, had Project Palladium going on, where they were trying to determine the capabilities of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they had moved a lot of their equipment into Cuba, which had made it very convenient. And to give you an example, this is a prime example of what we were doing. The CIA had picked up the reflections off the Russian ICBMs being tested in Russia of a new radar.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new radar. They didn't know a thing about it. They had the A-12 spy plane on the drawing board to replace the U-2. And the question was, will the A-12 be able to overfly Russia? So they, fortunately, this was the Tall King radar. That was the name of it. And fortunately, they moved this radar in the Q. So Project Palladium, what they were doing was flying out of Biggs Air Force Base in a ghost plane. It was full of electronics. And they'd fly at Cuba to get them to turn on their radar. And then they make the Cubans or Russians, whoever was controlling the radar, think they were tracking any number of planes that they wanted them to. It looked like 20 planes, one plane going away, coming in. And what they're doing is making them turn up the power of the radar and what have you. So I got recruited to go on a couple of these missions to record the ECM of the MiG planes that they were launching at the same time that they launched the turn on their radar.
Wow.
And that's how my first introduction to the CIA work was actually making the MiG-15s think they had a missile locked on them, so they'd turn on their defenses, and we could record their defenses and then apply that to our missiles. And
wow.
And it was touchy because they launched their planes. You know, they were very unfriendly about this. They were scared to death.
Yeah.
And fortunately, you know, we launched a couple of F-100s out of Homestead Air Force Base in Florida to head them off. Otherwise, they would take us out of the sky.
Yeah, and they even shot down one of the pilots and held a trial. Right? Didn't they even
That's right.
execute him?
Yeah, Rudolph Anderson in the U-2. And but what I did, how this works, I did not know this was part of the Oxcart program at Area 51 that they were doing this for. And what they determined with the Tall King radar is, yes, it will be able to shoot the A-12 down. And we never flew another mission over Russia.
Wow. Yeah.
Even though we built the plane for that purpose.
Wow. So yeah, that's a lot of money spent for this.
So you know, that's some of the side stuff that goes on outside of Area 51. You know, they didn't tell me you're doing this for Project Area 51. You know, they just sent me there because I was tops in my field at that time, and we need to acquire this data, and that's what we did.
And how'd you end up in Germany?
I deployed with the first Hawk missile. They were deployed for combat. We actually thought we were going to war. And
really? Was that? And what time was that?
And I was able to take my family. I had the only American family on the troop ship, and the CIA is one to arrange that. The fellows I worked with on those missions arranged it, but my kids had to wear dog tags, and my wife did like I did. And but that's how I ended up. It was for the Berlin Wall, and we deployed a battalion of Hawk missiles, and we set them up. And I put my wife in it, found a little apartment out in the about 35 kilometers out in the village, and went in to get some cooking utensils and what have you, because we didn't have anything, just some suitcases.
Yeah.
And I didn't get back for 3 weeks. The Russians were acting up. We thought they were coming across, and I was a mission essential. I could send my men, I could send my mess sergeant, people like that to take food and stuff out to my family. But that's their introduction to Germany, is I dropped them off, and they saw me 3 weeks later.
Wow. Yeah, and I know that you fought yourself, right, in Vietnam?
I didn't go to Vietnam. I was on the way to Vietnam. The CIA recruited me. They wanted me to go over as a
advisor.
As advisor, and I was an enlisted man at the time. And I told myself, well, I'll go, but I want to go as a commissioned officer.
Oh, okay.
And 18 days later, they flew me and the family back from Germany, and I was going through OCS at Fort Sill.
Oh.
And 18 days later. And that's where I got injured in survival training, and it ended my military career. To make a long story short, I was supposed to never be able to walk again. Fortunately, with modern technology, I'm doing just fine.
Wow. Well, that God bless. Thank God. And yeah, no. So So then basically you go from there to testing out these airplanes. How many airplanes did you were you involved with? And
Well, the minute I got out of the service, I was way advanced in the into my field. Well, in fact, the Army came out with a proficiency pay where they paid $30 extra for someone that passed the P1 test, and they came out with a P2 test, and I was the only one in my job description in Europe that passed the test. And of course, that really attracted the CIA, and that put a red flag on me. So when I got out, I was immediately recruited for the NASA High Range, and that was partly the CIA. They needed a man on site at Beatty, Nevada, to track the A-12. I was a member of what they called the Seven Sisters, and very few people outside the CIA even knew about this. But there was my radar tracking station, and then 6 of the Air Defense Command radar sites were made up the Seven Sisters, and when they would fly the A-12 out of Area 51, they would notify us to track, but do not record, do not say anything, just be observant of where he's at. And then in my case, I had the only radar system in the country, other than one at Ely and one at Edwards, that could record velocity. We were tracking the X-15, the XB-70, the lifting bodies that became the space shuttle, and then the lunar landers that landed on the moon. We were testing all of those at that time, and then we were doing the XB-70, which was a Mark III bomber, and then at that time we were just pioneering in the Mark III flight. We had the XB-70, but North American. Then Lockheed had built the CIA's spy plane, the A-12, which was a one-seater version of the SR-71 that came on along later. And then we did the YF-12, which was an A-12 that we took the cameras out of and put a second man in it and hung missiles on it to make it Mark III interceptor. And then we had a D-21 that was a mothership for a drone that we were developing to launch over China.
Wow.
And then the SR-71 was the last one. That's what everyone knows about. But we had these other 3 before we ever had the SR-71.
Wow. So drones have a way longer career than we're led to believe in the public.
Yeah, we developed we launched the drone at Mark III, and then it was and that it needed that much speed for the ramjets to unite on it and for it to work. And we ended up on the 3rd flight, the drone had an unstart, which meant it lost the thrust, and it fell back into the mothership, and it crashed the mothership, and the pilot and the RSO survived the crash. It broke up the plane. It went up in flames, but the RSO drowned when he hit the Pacific. We had lifeboats attached to their suits, so he had a little lifeboat that he wasn't able to get into it. And some people thought he was injured too bad to get in it, and other people thought he just lifted his face mask on his spacesuit too soon, and it filled up with water and drowned him. Wow! But we never knew. But anyway, that ended that project as far as using the mothership. So we started using the B-52 for the same thing, and we actually launched these drones over China, and some of them crashed inside of China. We had only one good recovery. It flew across China, it did its filming, and what they did is drop the package off the filament at sea, and a ship would pick it up and take it in for development. That was in theory. And we had one successful mission, and then the ship run over the package and sunk it. So we didn't even recover that one.
Yes,
but we did develop, the procedure, and it later on became, the drones became very, very popular. But that was the very early attempt at developing a drone plane.
I have to say one thing. See, so you're talking about drones flying, at speeds we can't even comprehend, and I get attacked for not believing in aliens. So there you go, people. If there's something right there that could fly faster than a plane, and it high, and it is not alien whatsoever.
Yeah, you got to remember, Pete, we were launching these at Mark III. That's faster than a rifle bullet. The speed that we were launching these things, and we were at 90,000 feet. And what a lot of you talk about UFOs, that was one of our concerns out there, because we flew 2,850 missions out of Area 51 with just the A-12 spy plane alone.
Wow.
and no one's supposed to know we had it, and occasionally it would be seen, and it was truly a UFO, because that we weren't supposed to have anything that could fly that high.
Yeah, unidentified flying object, not alien object, So, I mean, basically people are saying, people like yourself are working side by side on spaceships, flying saucers with aliens, to me, that I'm an idiot for not believing in it. So what's your take? You didn't run into any little green men, I'm assuming.
None of that. The only reverse engineering we did on anything was the Russians,
the MiGs,
the MiGs,
yeah,
and the radar. We got during the 6-Day War. Israel captured a lot of that stuff, and we ended up with that at Area 51.
Well, TD, thank you for saying that, because now that's official. Not many people could say that they got confirmation from someone who worked in Area 51. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, let's kind of shift towards, the modern times. And what caught my eye was the X-37B space plane. Basically, you guys were working on an earlier model already, I'm sure. I know that it has a long lineage. What exactly do you think it does up there? And can you speak on that, or?
No, we're in detail. I can't, and frankly, I don't know everything it does up there. But we have advanced. You got to remember, when we built the A-12, that's still the fastest plane and the highest flying plane that's ever been built. Of that type of plane, and they'll never. And we did that with slide rules. We didn't even have computers, so you can only imagine what they are able to do in the last 50 or 60 years.
Oh yeah,
on that and on stealth and everything that we worked on, that we pioneered, we did it the hard way, and I'm sure it is so primitive by today's standards. But to answer your question, there's just absolutely no telling. Just use your imagination of what they've got up there now.
I've done a lot of research on things, and yeah, there's even alternative propulsion systems now that we have no clue about.
We have no clue at all. We have advanced. You just look at your look at your iPhone. You got a little screen that you just tap on and it does different things. How does it know? And Corning glasses come out with stuff that is just blows your mind, and that's just stuff that we know about.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, I mean, what's your take on this? Bill Scott wrote a great book about this. And I concur. I think that World War III, if it were to start on a mass scale, would probably start in space with like a X-37B or something like that. And another country's version shooting down a satellite or something like that, even though it's hard to prove, or maybe even another aircraft, Your
first target would be the satellites. And our technology today, we depend on those satellites. Just, probably not as much so now, but just think back when we first started flying the Reaper or the Predators in Iraq and Afghanistan. We controlled those right up the street here from me in Nevada. And so all we had to do, to cut off that link was knock out that satellite.
Yeah.
But we're so dependent on satellites now. Electronic warfare will be it will do more damage than any bombs or anything like that.
Yeah, EMPs. Well, I mean, give us our listeners just how real of an EMP threat is, because that seems to be what most countries are looking to do.
It is, and I wrote a 3-book series on EMP. It had to be fictional, but I tried to keep it just as factual as possible, because I've always had an interest in it, and I was exposed to some of this during my career. And it is so scary. And it's not a matter if it happens; it's a matter of when. It can come in across the Mexican border in the back of us on someone packed it in on a satchel, and set it off in the right place. And all it has to do is get into our electric grid, and it goes from coast to coast. It goes into Canada. It goes into Mexico. Wherever we have electric line, it's an antenna for that. And in a split second, you have lost everything.
Now, how easily could, like, say, a terrorist group grab one of these like boxes? I mean, or devices. I mean,
it scares us to death right now. I do know that our military is gearing up for it won't knock out all your military stuff, but the civilian side isn't. And I've talked to, after I wrote my book, I did several radio interviews on this particular subject, because they've always preached be prepared, stockpile food and that kind of stuff. And as I told some of the preppers, I said, all you're doing is make yourself a target. If people know that you've hoarded some food, they're going to be after that food.
Oh yeah.
And just like the Mormons out west here, they stock 2 or 3 years of supply of food. Well, they would naturally become a target for those that don't have it. And so the stockpiling is not entirely the answer. I mean, it's part of it, but you got to be prepared. What would you do if you woke up one morning and you don't have any electricity, no phones, no internet, it takes out all your water pumps. You don't have any water. You got zero.
Yeah, and what's crazy about that is, like, we're so like you said earlier, like basically dependent on technology, and on top of it, we're not self-sufficient as far as growing food even for ourselves. Like even like back when with early 1900s, when the EMP took out part of the grid.
Yeah, and in the books, I addressed the military. We had Nellis Air Force Base right up close to where I live and all. You know what? They're dependent upon the civilian trucks to deliver food to them. Their supplies come in through civilian sources, and if you got no trucks running on the highway
and no food,
and everybody, these modern cars got all the electronics. You got your little, you don't even use a key to get them. You got a little Bluetooth. It knocks those out instantly. All of those are gone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So your all these your cars that you got computers, you just kiss them goodbye. And same way with your trucks. So all of a sudden you don't have any food coming in. So even your military is going to have a problem, because they can't resupply. The supply lines are cut. Plus they got if you're around a big city like we are here, you got 2 million people that's only knocking on your door wanting whatever you got there.
I'm in Chicago, so it's
yeah, exactly.
That's not a good thought. And just to think, naturally it could happen via like a solar flare, It
is, and say it knocks out your water supply. You go in and flush your toilet one time, and then you're done. And if you got a very, very large family, you're gonna have a serious problem before long, because you can't, you don't have bathroom facilities. And just think of a whole city like that.
It's chaos. Do you think that's why the government's on this mass like underground bunker buildings like spree, basically?
Yeah, and they don't know what to do. I've read several reports done by some of the ex-CIA directors, different ones on, particularly on the EMP, and they don't know what to do. They know we got a major problem, and they're trying to handle it, but you can't get the civilian sector to spend the money, your utility companies and stuff, to harden their electronics where they won't be wiped out. And it's not that big a deal to do so.
You need to ground it, right?
Yeah, and actually it needs to be protected. There's different ways of doing it, but it's real simple to protect yourself from EMP. They call it Faraday boxes. All you got to have is even tinfoil covering where the signal it comes in as more like a radio signal.
Wow.
But if you got an antenna, that's what it looks for. And regardless how well you got whatever you got shielded, if you got an antenna sticking out that will pick up that signal, it's still going to wipe everything out.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, honestly, I know it's because the different companies and all, they own certain sections and they don't collaborate. So yeah, that's something that should be number one priority, is like making, sure that they could do whatever they possibly can, because that's the end of the United States as we know it.
And you was asking about future war. This, I'm sure that, well, it's kind of public knowledge now. We've been testing. You call them ray guns or whatever you want to, but it's directed EMP.
Yes.
Where you take out a building. Say you got a bunch of bad guys in a building, you can literally isolate it from all electrical. Nothing will work on it.
Yeah.
But it'd be that type of warfare that both sides will want to use, is bring a roof down on the people as far as their supplies. Cut off the supplies, and pretty soon you've ended the war.
Yeah, exactly. That's modern form of siege, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, speaking on that, I've had people send me sources on, directed energy and things like that. I mean, couldn't we look into the Tesla, way that he actually experimented with wireless energy as alternative? Or if we did, we'd basically kill the big electric companies and, affects the powers that be. Because I think that basically the guy's been right on, like you said, the directed energy weaponry, they have so many kinds of the stealth, like assassination weapons, which cause people to have heart attacks. I mean,
oh yeah,
I know all about it, but why don't they apply his resources to anything positive? Like,
they do so much good, because I'm sure they got weapons that will act like a microwave, against troops.
Yep.
Where you hit them with the right frequency, the moisture in the skin will heat up just like you put your hand in a microwave, and pretty soon, I mean, you're burning it. And just as be just as severe as you want it to be. You can either use it for crowd control, or you make it lethal.
Wow.
but ray guns and stuff like that is thing of the future. Bombs and stuff is going to be obsolete, except in these little scrimmages like we're in now. Urban, but if it ever comes to the major warfare, but what scares me, Pete, is what happened if, say, someone hit the United States, Iran or North Korea, was successful at setting off an EMP. What would our neighbors do, like China and Russia? Would they come help us, or would they say, "Boy, we got an opportunity here, guys. Let's go get them"?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think they'd come get us. I
think they'd be knocking on our door.
Yeah.
Any weakness like that.
Yeah, because we've had the Ukraine situation. We've also had the whole Chinese what was it? The carriers coming close to our warships, and
that's right. Yeah.
So we've had they're showing signs of already. We technically owe China, I don't even know how much money. So yeah, they're gonna come knocking at the door, and they're not gonna be friendly.
Anytime we're weak, and you can count on it, it's not gonna be pretty.
Hey, Danny. Yeah, no, you're right on that. But for some reason, I just lost my visual contact. But yeah, so tell me about your time on when you actually, I didn't even know it existed, but the nuclear rocket development program with the rocket vehicle engine with the nuclear engine. How that sounds unbelievable.
Yeah, we developed. This actually started back in, I think, right after World War II, and but it was quite advanced when I got into it. But we had developed a nuclear rocket engine, and we were actually planning to attach it to a Saturn V rocket for a manned flight to Mars.
Wow!
And this is back in the 60s and the 70s. We actually developed the nuclear power. It's been developed all this time, and it will eventually be used. The only reason it can never be used here on the planet. It has to be used for space travel, and like you would have a way station, like the International Space Station. Could be a way station. You'd have, and that's where you would board a nuclear powered transport. But it's environmentalists and what have you would never ever let you use that kind of power here, because if you did have a crash or something, it would spread radiation everywhere. But we developed the engines, and they were very much more efficient than anything that we've ever used, the rocket engines, and they brought that to a conclusion, and someday they will use those.
Wow. What about vertical takeoff? Have we perfected vertical takeoff? I know we've tried.
Yeah, some of the civilian competition now for flying the International Space Station have actually demonstrated vertical takeoff, where they took off and landed their rockets.
Wow.
Yeah, that has been. I saw a video clip of that just not very long ago. I think it happened maybe in Mojave, California. A lot of that is going on there. But they had the.
Oh yeah, I think I did see that myself. It was flying like real low to a crowd of people, right? And
yeah. Had people already. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, that's it's crazy to think about that. People are attacking me for saying things like that. Our planes can't take off vertically and things. It's just crazy to think about that.
Go back to that NERVA project. This might be of interest to your listeners. The engine is a very powerful engine, and we had it above ground. We had it out at Jackass Flats. Is where we tested it, and the engine was actually, the tail was pointed up in the air. We had a test stand that held the engine in place, and we had we worked on the engine. We had a 3 different stations, about 3 miles apart, and you'd work on the engine, and it's all radioactive. So you did it with mechanical arms looking through a 11-foot glass, 11-foot wall, and then you put on a locomotive that's radio controlled, and you take it out to the test stand. And we'd actually unload it by radio control, set it up where the nose pointed into the ground. And then we actually were situated underneath it, underground. We went back in about a quarter mile away. We'd go in underground.
Wow.
We had all of our controls and stuff. But when we run the engine, we had 3 million gallons of water that we had stored in storage tanks that we'd released immediately to keep the test stand cool. Keep it from melting down.
Wow.
And then the engines and all that was, we had liquid nitrogen, minus 160 degrees, that we circulated through the engine and through whatever might get hot, so that we didn't melt it down. And we'd run that thing, and we perfected it. When we was done, this is ready to go. But what we had was the engine. We didn't have a vehicle that could handle the engine.
Wow. So did you ever find one?
No, not really. Well, they never have tried. Once they developed the engine, the project, they put it on the shelf, and of course NASA went into nose dive on when we quit going to the moon and that kind of stuff. And as you know, we kind of lost interest, and so it never did go anywhere. But I have heard a lot of talk about starting it up again for future travel.
I wouldn't doubt, yeah, for like commercial travel. I've heard.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So yeah, I mean that's, and you've actually are one of the few people. What made you actually come out and speak about your time? Pretty much as man, in a lot of classified projects. I know they're declassified now. So is that what allows you to speak on this? And
well, yeah, it's kind of unique. I'm president of an organization called Roadrunners International, and that is all the guys that worked out at Area 51 on these projects. It's the CIA, Air Force, Lockheed, Kodak, Pratt Whitney, all the companies that work there. We got an organization, and And so we have reunions about every 2 years, and I know them all, being the president, and some are engineers, some are pilots, everything. Well, about 12 years ago, Dr. Robards, chief historian at CIA, called me at my home and says, "I've got a problem." He said, "I've been given the job of declassifying the Archcart program, and we don't have any records. We don't know we know we paid for the program, but we don't have any records of it." And what had happened when they shut down Project Oxheart at Area 51, which included the other planes that we talked about, all the Blackbirds, they gathered up all the records, photographs, everything, and stored them at Norton Air Force Base, put them in storage, and they sat there for about 30, 40 years until they got ready to declassify the program. And they called up Norton, "Where's our stuff?" And it's gone.
Wow.
All the records of everything we did. So as a consequence, because I knew the pilots, I knew the engineers, we started reconstructing what we did by having them print out do their own personal bio of their time there. And we started doing presentations. And I've actually been flown back to Langley several times where we would do nothing but go to all the agencies, intelligence agencies, giving presentations to them of what we did back then.
Wow.
Because what we realized that when they started declassifying stuff, and the industry was able to see it, they found out that they were fighting some of the same problems that we had and that we solved, but they didn't know about it because it's all classified.
Yeah.
So we started sharing with modern day technology. We run into the same problem that you're having, and here's what we did.
What happened?
But I just gave a speech out at UNLV last Saturday, I guess it was, but CIA actually sends people out here to join me and active duty people in some of these presentations, because it's first of all it's for history. It's a kind of you might say an oral history project.
Well, you guys deserve it. I mean, you won the Cold War for us. There should be some kind of records to basic.
It was kind of funny. It was embarrassing for them, but we don't know what you guys did, but we didn't talk to each other, and that's one thing about these reunions. And they love to come to these reunions and just listen to us. Anytime we get together, we'll start talking about things that we did not talk about back then. Oh. And even we learned something new
from
just about every time we get together.
Someone you've known for a long time too, Well,
like take a couple of your pilots, particularly like when they're flying Operation Black Shield over North Vietnam and North Korea. Or the pilots, when they come in for flight, they bunked to them to their quarters, and they just say, "How'd your flight go today?" or anything. They didn't have a need to know. You did not talk to each other. And they weren't even allowed to come into my building at Area 51 back then. Because we were working on MiG programs, we were working on stealth, we were working on different programs. And if you didn't have a need to know, you shouldn't even come in the building.
Yeah. And if you even saw it, you'd have to sign a disclosure, Yeah,
and we didn't travel together. We traveled separately. Our quarters were separate. We had a common mess hall, but you didn't talk shop at all.
And you couldn't
even among the guys on my team, there's 23 of us on my special projects team, and to this day, there's certain things that we don't talk about because we know it's still classified, and it makes us feel uncomfortable if someone started asking questions about it, even though it's nothing that couldn't be talked about, but just the mere fact that it hasn't been declassified. Well,
what percentage of your work is yet to be, classified or declassified?
Oh, probably about 95%.
Are you? Wow.
We did a lot of things that it's just you get a bunch of engineers together out there with the means of doing it. We all had pet projects that we were wanting to explore. Like you might say, get their PhD in them, and we had the means of doing it. So we did a lot of projects that weren't really on the books at the time. And they later became a project because of what we discovered. It's kind of like a think tank, you might say.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's
And we had time on our hands because the Soviets would keep us pinned down with their satellites, maybe a couple of months at a time go by with, and we couldn't really do anything constructive on the projects that we were there for. But we would do other things, within the confines of our building that we were, really interested in. I want to look more in that. Why can't we do this, or why can't we do that? And we put our heads together and we'd do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
But
what
that's
happened.
the type of people they recruited. That's the reason we were there.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys sacrificed a lot. You couldn't even talk to your family about this,
My wife found out where I worked and what I did in 2009.
Oh, wow.
They flew us back to Langley, and that's when they officially declassified where we could tell her wise. And all she knew is I got on a plane on Monday morning and came home Friday night, and that she was not, her and the kids were not able to talk about what I did. They didn't know, first of all, but they couldn't even talk about that. So when I asked them where your husband works, they were instructed to stay out of the Nevada test site.
Wow.
And,
was she happy about that, or
she was my wife was very angry when she found out that I was only 85 miles from home a big part of the time, and she didn't know it. And see, we could call home anytime we wanted to, so we'd call every day to keep track of the family and all.
That's smart.
But she couldn't call us. She had no idea where we was at. She had an emergency number. If there's an emergency, that she had a number to call.
Well, that's good at least,
Yeah.
but wow, that's amazing information right there. I mean, so basically we got about 7 minutes left. You want to talk about your books and give our listeners an idea of what they're about and where they could purchase them?
The EMP books. Amazon's the best. They're on ebook and paperback. That's a 3-book series, and then I've got one. It's kind of my autobiography. The name of it is the Odyssey to Area 51, and it tells how I got there and the projects that I went through on the way, and it identifies a lot of people that I worked with, and to give them a little bit of a credit. And then I did it's probably the only book out on the MiG projects that we did at Area 51, the Soviet MiGs, and that became a mainstay of Area 51. What they did, they did 2 things there. That was exploit enemy aircraft and electronics and stealth technology. That's the reason the base stayed alive. And what we did on the MiG program was so important. We reversed a 9-to-1 kill ratio against us in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Completely turned it around and turned it into your Top Gun exercises or weapons school, and your red flag exercises came from the MiG programs that we did. Well, they declassified these a year ago this month. A year ago, last October, they declassified those where we could talk about them. So I published the first book, and it was approved by the CIA, and it tells about the CIA's role in it, as well as the Air Force and all. It's pretty technical, but it tells a lot about some of the same things we talked about, the people that worked out there, how you got selected to work out there, that sort of thing. So that's been a very popular book, mainly because it doesn't have any competition. Because I had all the resources to write it, and the photographs, got photographed stuff that no one there.
And it never will.
But it was approved by the. That's one thing I do have to do, is get my books approved by the CIA.
And also, I'd like to congratulate you on being in the Nevada Aerospace Hall of Fame. And that's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, we started that because many of our people did not get recognition. We got, we call them proof of concept planes that we flew out of Area 51, and it's some of the stuff we can't talk
dangerous
about.
Dangerous
stuff. These guys are getting these planes and say, let's see if this thing will fly. I mean, that hurts the nerve, and that's a lot of the projects we still can't talk about because they weren't the official projects as far as the becoming a plane that we fly today. They were just to prove, like the bird of prey. That's unclassified that we did it, but that's the strangest looking thing you ever saw.
Yeah.
And all that was to prove up technology.
Why was the Avro car developed? Because that thing was horrible.
I don't know, but you know what? One of the most successful things we did was we call it the whale, was the Tackett Blue project.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
now,
that.
That developed in, of course, the B-2 bomber used a lot of that stuff. That went into the F-37, I think, even used a lot of that technology. But it went into a lot of these extra vehicles that we got today. That technology, it was one of our most successful as far as developing new technology.
Yeah, no, and that's a very, although the planes, like even like the SR-71 look very unique, so it's almost like I could see why people would mistake them for unidentified, like UFOs from outer space, but technically they were UFOs. And like you said, 95% of what we talked about, or what we can't talk about, basically, it's flying up there as well. So.
Just think about say Norton and Lockheed are in competition with a new type of plane, something like the F-22 or the F-35, something like that. Each one's developing their own version, and they developed those in their hometown or facility in Washington or California, wherever. Well, people see those things flying back there, and there's not supposed to be anything like that. So they start seeing these UFOs even back in these other states, because that's where the aerospace companies are testing them. Mm-hmm. And then they bring them to Area 51 to prove them. That's when they want to sell them to the government says, come show me what you got. And then they end up flying out there. But people see a lot of sightings in other places other than Area 51. That's really something, just a new technology that these companies are coming up with that they're hoping to sell to the one of the services.
Yeah, like that's a perfect, I have a perfect analogy. Basically, at O'Hare, we had a big sighting, right? Well, It went right over the tower. So if you were going to try to prove that you couldn't be picked up by radar and you try to hit the blind spot, you go right over the tower. So it sounds like they're trying to prove that this craft worked.
Exactly. And that's one thing that Area 51 does now is, like, say Texas Instruments comes up with some kind of new technology that put it in a pod and attach it to a B-52 or one of the bombers that identifies friendly forces 30, 40 miles ahead of it. Well, where they test that would be they'd say, all right, take a run at Area 51 and see if it works.
Yeah, it's first there, and then
or if it's something that was supposed to be able to jam a Chinese radar, they don't have to go to China to see if it works. They just fly to Area 51, and we have a prototype there that matches whatever China's got.
Wow!
And we can see if it works. So Area 51 is just a big laboratory. That's all it is.
And expanding too. Well, I have to, thank you, TD, for coming on. Do you have any final thoughts? Where can our listeners buy your books at?
I just have Google my name, Thornton. I put them under Thornton D. Barnes, I think, or TD Barnes, either one, and they'll pop up. I have no problem finding them.
Okay, and any final thoughts or anything about current events you like to bring up?
No, I'm just very nervous about current events because I think we're living in some very dangerous times, and particularly what's going on in Syria and what have you. If some of those crazies get their hands on a nuclear warhead or something, we got some problems.
Yeah, you got that right. You're not the only one. But TD, I'd love to have you on again sometime in the near future.
My pleasure, buddy.
All right. It was an honor talking to you. And like I said, I have an actual section of my book if I get it published regarding your efforts. So thank you. And, you helped win the Cold War for us and your sacrifice,
Yeah, it was a team. We had a team of us.
You're a true American hero.
Well, thank you very much, Pete. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. And have a good night.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Wow. That I got to admit, I never really get overwhelmed. I was really nervous speaking with him because, I mean, you don't get to talk to someone from inside Area 51 much. I think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, but man, oh man, the information he just let out, like we don't know 95% of the things that are flying in the sky, people. Think about that. You alien attackers, you guys that attack me for not believing. But this is The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction with Pete Wichert. That's Saturday, October 25th of 2014. We're going to a quick break.
Reports for the sonic boom started pouring into Nellis and other places to lay the blame on the Navy as fouling, because we did not exist. Well, I was about like a raven among a bunch of ducks for these people. First of all, I was Army. My job was to shoot their tails down. I was on surface air missiles. It was a good thing, Dennis, that I wasn't sitting there shooting those missiles, or you would have made it home. It was home. My background was that I started a career as an intelligence specialist, and I did a little deed over there that drew the attention of I was still about an E4, drew the attention of a 2-star general, and he kind of adopted me. And when rotation was up, he said, "Son, you need to get into the electronics," and he urged me to get into the missile field, which I did, and I got to Fort Bliss, Texas, and went to my first school. Lasted for a year, and I was going to Texas Western at night, so I was a full-time student. Got out of school, and they just started another one, and the one I just finished was already obsolete. It was a Nike Ajax, so I signed up for another year. Went through it. The time I got out of that, I had enough rank. They couldn't just put me doing anything. They didn't have an assignment for me, so I signed up for another one. And I started advancing into, I got interested in electronic countermeasures and electronic countermeasures, which is the jamming and anti-jamming. And the planes do the ECM. It's electronic countermeasures, and our job is to figure out what they're going to do and get through it. And that's your countermeasures. Anyway, I had gotten to become sort of an expert in this field, and the CIA has started Project Palladium, trying to evaluate the capabilities of the Soviet radars around the world, because at that time we still didn't know what their capability was, and we knew they'd moved some Soviet aircraft into Cuba. We didn't know about the missiles at that time, and Raytheon had just built the Hawk missile, and we were still fine-tuning it. It wasn't ready to go operational, so they grabbed me to work with a team of them, and we'd load this missile up into the belly of a plane, take the nose cone off of it, and head toward Cuba. And we get close in, we would start radiating their planes with a CW signal, making them think there's the incoming missile coming at them. And they turn on their jammers, and I'd watch the nose cone on my missile, and as soon as I could see the jamming was getting through to it, it started drifting off. I'd start tweaking here, tweaking there, and we were recording all of this and learning how to get through their systems. And they, after three times of this, they got wise to it, and they took a couple shots at us, so we had to knock it off. And but that's the first time I worked for Dr. Bud Wheelon with the CIA, and who incidentally was the head of the Oshkosh program later at Area 51. But make a long story short, I got out of the service. I got disabled and got injured, and it ruined my military career. So I had all this electronics experience. So NASA grabbed me for the NASA high range, tracking the X-15, the XB-70, with developing the lunar landing vehicles. We had what we call the lifting bodies. It was the prototypes for the space shuttle. All of this was going on in the 60s, plus we started tracking the YF-12. I participated in the speed run that Bob talked about. And tracking the X-15, we had the capability of recording velocity, where most radar stations don't necessarily have it. They don't care. They just want to know where you're at, and so they can hit you, track you. So I started getting calls from the agency. They didn't say where they called it from. They didn't say what I was going to be tracking, but they said, we got a plane we want you to track. and record the velocity, and don't let anyone know what you're doing. You lock the doors to the room, go in and track it, bundle it up, and we'll come pick it up. And that was the end of the story. They didn't tell me what was tracking. But Beatty, I was at Beatty is where it's located, the radar site there. Well, we're not that far from Groom Lake. And I'd get, out of curiosity, I'd get in on the radar. That really wasn't my job. I was more of, at that time, they called me a hypersonic flight support specialist, which meant I knew telemetry, radar, communications, data transmission, everything it took to run a tracking station. But I loved radar. That was my background. So I go in there and I found out that something really, really fast flying out of Groom Lake. I picked it up one time. We couldn't pick up the beacon, but we could get a skin track on it just very briefly. But I noticed always before this fast dude took off, there's some slower planes to take off. And then what this was, the weather flights. They take off the F-101s, and pretty soon here come that fast burger. And that was it was a challenge for me to see if I could pick him up for 10 or 15 seconds at least. But so we knew he was there, but it was no big secret. But with some of us, most people's station did not know this because they weren't cleared for it. But I did have special clearance, and also we knew when they moved the YF-12 to Edwards, they shared our control room, so we definitely knew that we had a Mark III plane. But what was interesting at that period of time, this was during the space race, the nuclear race. We had a lot of races going on with Russia. They were the bad boys. But we had 3 Mark III planes in the works. We had the A-12, the YF-12, and the one that I was working on primarily was the XB-70, the bomber. And it was many, many times the planes that these guys were flying. And we got it over Mark III. And that's one we had a mid-air collision a few years later. And also we finally aborted the program. It was too expensive, and we knew it should be shot down. It came obsolete, but it was a great study for high-speed transport, which later on the YF-12 took its place. And when they decided not to maintain it as a interceptor, they took one of our tracking stations and converted it to long-range radar and would track it as a continuation of the XB-70 project. So. I got exposed to EMP actually before I went to Area 51, and it was on the NERVA program. We were studying the effects of nuclear. And it fascinated me because I could see where this would become a weapon of the future. Any country that could build a bomb, get their hands on a bomb, and set it off in the harbor, New York, San Diego, wherever, and they would wipe out 90% of the people in the United States, or anywhere they set off the bomb, really. Because people would wake up one morning, they'd go in and use the bathroom. Once they flushed it once, the bowl didn't refill. There's no water. They turn the water tap on, water's in the lines, that's it. Television doesn't work, the phones don't work, there's no internet. They wake up one morning, nothing is working. I think the nuclear spring is about the people, the survivors end up in the Yucca Mountain Tunnel. That was designed for nuclear waste repository, was never used. It was just perfect. I use the Nevada National Guard as the military end of it because they are trained for this very event. And then I go into the nuclear submarines when they're finally able to come back out and start rebuilding society and find out just how bad the effects were. And they have a lot of major problems of restarting agriculture, getting water supplies for that. And then you've got people that did survive the attacks down in Central America, places like that are migrating to the United States because it's vacant now. You got, Las Vegas, all these buildings we got here, no one in them. It focuses on Nevada because this is because you got Homeland Security is based here. People may not know this, but a lot of your Homeland Security, this is where they train. We got the National Security Training Site out at the test site. So you got all the brains of the United States are here. Area 51 people, the test site people. So the government wants to preserve that technology. And then a lot of the book is about how they get along in a mountain
for 4 years. I try to keep the books just as realistic as possible. And the people that read them, that's the reviews say that. Gee, this could really happen. Gee, this is the way it would be. And what it does is make them start thinking, how would I prepare for something like this? And I've had a lot of the so-called experts on the preppers, they call themselves, that they advocate being prepared, stockpiling food and this sort of thing. I've had them call me up, and I've done several radio interviews on this. I said, man, were we ever wrong? After reading your book, we realized that what we have been preaching all these years was not the answer. Like number one, I thank you very much.